The blood on Willa Hartley's white linen handkerchief was not her own, and she knew that by the time she washed it clean in the creek behind the church, her fate would already be sealed. It was August of 1878 in Newton, Kansas, and the summer heat pressed down on everything like the hand of an angry god. Willa knelt beside the narrow creek, her dark hair escaping from its pins as she scrubbed at the stained fabric. The blood belonged to a ranch hand who had been shot during a dispute at the saloon the night before. She had been summoned from the rectory where she had been staying for the past 3 months, preparing to take her final vows and enter the Sisters of Mercy Convent in St. Louis. Mother Superior had allowed her to go, believing that acts of charity would strengthen her commitment to a life of service. But as Willa watched the red bloom in the water and disappear downstream, she felt something she had been trying to ignore for weeks now. Doubt. Not doubt in God or in goodness, but doubt that the stone walls of a convent were where she was meant to spend the rest of her 21 years, and all the years that would follow. She had come to Newton with her father 5 years ago when she was 16, after her mother had died of fever back in Ohio. Her father, James Hartley, had been a good man, a schoolteacher who believed in education and progress. He had taught her to read Latin and Greek, to calculate figures, to think for herself. Perhaps that was the problem. When he died 2 years ago from a fall off a horse, she had been utterly alone. The church had taken her in, given her purpose. Sister Agnes had been kind, and Willa had found comfort in the routine of prayer and service. The decision to enter the convent had seemed natural, inevitable. What else was there for a woman alone in the world? She had no family, no prospects, no dowry to speak of. Her father had left her only his books and his belief that she was capable of anything. The church offered security, community, a place where her education could be useful teaching children. It offered a life of meaning, so why did her chest feel tight every time she thought about leaving Newton? Why did she find herself walking past the general store more slowly, watching the families come and go? Why did she stand at her window at night, looking out at the vast Kansas sky and feeling like she was about to step into a cage? You fixing to baptize yourself, or are you actually washing something? Willa startled, nearly dropping the handkerchief into the creek. She turned and found herself looking up at a man on horseback. He sat easy in the saddle, one hand resting on his thigh, the other holding the reins loosely. He was perhaps 25 or 26, with sun-darkened skin and light brown hair that curled slightly at the ends where it touched his collar. His eyes were a striking blue-green, the color of the creek in winter, and they held a mixture of amusement and something else she could not quite name. "I am washing a handkerchief, as you can clearly see," Willa said, hearing the prim note in her own voice and disliking it. She was not yet a nun. She did not need to sound like one. "Looks like you are doing a fine job," the man said. He dismounted in one fluid motion, leading his horse to the water's edge to drink. "Though I have to say, most folks wash their laundry upstream of where the animals drink." Willa felt her cheeks flush. Of course, she had not been thinking. She gathered the handkerchief and stood, water dripping from her hands. "I will remember that for next time." "Did not mean to embarrass you," the man said, and he sounded sincere. "You are Willa Hartley, right? The schoolteacher's daughter." "I am," Willa said cautiously. "And you are?" "Ryder Brooks. I have a ranch about 10 miles east of here. Small operation, mostly horses." He pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his hair. "I knew your father a little. He once helped my younger brother with his reading when we first came to Kansas. Would not take any payment for it." "That sounds like my father," Willa said, and felt the familiar ache of loss. 3 years had not diminished it. "I was sorry to hear about his passing," Ryder said. "He was a good man." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I heard you are going away soon to a convent." Willa stiffened. "Yes, in 3 weeks. I leave for St. Louis on the 15th of September." Ryder looked at her for a long moment, and Willa had the uncomfortable feeling that he could see right through her practiced composure to the turmoil beneath. "That is a big decision," he finally said. "It is the right decision," Willa replied, but even to her own ears, it sounded like she was trying to convince herself. "If you say so." Ryder put his hat back on and gathered his horse's reins. "I should get going. I have supplies to pick up in town." He swung back into the saddle, then looked down at her again. "Miss Hartley, can I ask you something?" "I suppose so." "Do you want to go? To the convent, I mean. Is it what you really want?" The question hit Willa like a physical blow. No one had asked her that. Not Sister Agnes, not Mother Superior, not any of the well-meaning townspeople who told her how admirable her choice was, how proud her father would have been. They had all assumed, or perhaps she had simply told them what they wanted to hear. "I do not see how that is any of your business, Mr. Brooks," she said stiffly. "You are right, it is not." He tipped his hat to her. "But for what it is worth, it seems to me that a person ought to want the life they are choosing. Otherwise, what is the point?" He urged his horse forward and rode away, leaving Willa standing by the creek with a damp handkerchief in her hands and 100 questions suddenly demanding answers. She walked back to the rectory slowly, her mind churning. The small house behind the church had been her home for the past 3 months. Sister Agnes lived there, along with 2 other women who were also preparing to take vows. They spent their days in prayer, in study, in service to the community. It was a peaceful life, a purposeful life. But as Willa climbed the steps to the front door, she realized with a start that she could not remember the last time she had laughed. Really laughed, the way she used to with her father over some joke or clever turn of phrase. Sister Agnes was in the kitchen, preparing the evening meal. She was a small woman in her 40s, with a face that had probably been pretty once and was now simply kind. "Willa, dear, you were gone a long while. Is everything all right?" "Yes, sister. I just took my time walking back." Willa hung the handkerchief to dry and washed her hands in the basin. "Mother Superior sent word. She will be here on the 10th to accompany us to St. Louis. She is bringing another novice from Topeka." Sister Agnes smiled. "You must be so excited, only 3 weeks left." "Yes," Willa said, "excited." But that night, lying in her narrow bed, Willa could not sleep. She kept thinking about Ryder Brooks and his question. "Do you want to go?" She tried to remember when she had made the decision to enter the convent. Had she decided, or had she simply stopped resisting? After her father died, the church had been there, offering her a path forward when she could not see one herself. She had been grieving lost. The convent had seemed like a haven, but was it truly what she wanted? Or was it simply the only option she could see? Willa rose before dawn and went to the church. It was empty at this hour, cool and dim. She knelt in a pew and tried to pray, but the words would not come. Instead, she found herself remembering her father teaching her to ride when she was 12, the 2 of them reading together by lamplight. The way he had looked at the endless Kansas sky and said, "Willa, my girl, the world is so much bigger than we can imagine. Never let anyone make you smaller than you are." Had she let the church make her smaller? Or was she simply afraid of the world's bigness? She did not have an answer. Over the next few days, Willa found herself distracted. She made mistakes in her prayers, forgot tasks Sister Agnes had asked her to complete. She went through the motions, but her heart was not in it. And she kept seeing Ryder Brooks in her mind, the way he had sat so easy on his horse, the directness of his question. On the 4th day after their meeting by the creek, Willa was in town buying flour for Sister Agnes when she saw him again. He was coming out of the general store, carrying a box of supplies. When he saw her, his face lit up in a way that made something flutter in her chest. "Miss Hartley," he said, setting the box in his wagon. "Good to see you again. Mr. Brooks." Willa nodded politely, aware of the curious looks from other townspeople. A woman preparing to take vows should not be seen talking casually with a cowboy. "How have you been?" he asked. "Well, thank you, and you?" "Cannot complain." He hesitated, then said, "I have been thinking about what I said to you by the creek. I hope I did not upset you." "You did not upset me," Willa said. "You just made me think." "And is that a good thing or a bad thing? I am not sure yet." Ryder smiled, and it transformed his face. "Well, thinking is usually a good place to start." He glanced around, then lowered his voice. "Miss Hartley, I know this is forward of me, and you can tell me to go to blazes if you want, but would you take a walk with me? Just around town. I promise I will behave like a perfect gentleman." Willa knew she should say no. It was improper. She was about to take vows that would separate her from this world forever, but she found herself saying, "Yes, I would like that." They walked down the main street of Newton, past the hotel and the saloon and the smithy. Ryder did most of the talking at first, telling her about his ranch, about the horses he raised. "I came to Kansas 5 years ago with my brother, Caleb. We had saved up enough money working cattle drives to buy some land. Started with nothing but a couple of horses and a lot of hope." "It must have been difficult," Willa said. "It was, still is some days, but it is mine, you know. I built it myself. That means something." Willa understood. That was how her father had felt about his school, about his teaching. He had built something that mattered. "What about you?" Ryder asked. "What do you want to build?" The question startled her. "I am entering a convent. I will teach children, serve the community." "That is what you will do, but what do you want to build? What makes your heart beat faster?" Willa was quiet for a long moment. "Finally," she said, "when I was a girl, my father and I used to talk about opening a real school here in Newton. Not just him teaching in the church, but a proper school building where children could learn everything. Reading, writing, mathematics, history, science. He wanted boys and girls both to have the same education. That was unusual, but he believed in it." "Did you want that too?" "I did. I wanted to teach, to help build something that would last." She laughed, but it sounded sad. "But that was just a child's dream. It is not practical." "Why not?" "Because I have no money to build a school, and I am a woman alone. No one would take me seriously." "You might be surprised," Ryder said quietly. "The world is changing, Miss Hartley. Slowly maybe, but it is changing." They had reached the edge of town. The prairie stretched out before them, golden grass rippling in the wind. Willa looked out at it and felt something stir in her chest. Longing. Not for the convent's stone walls, but for this. Open sky, possibility. "I should get back," she said, but she did not move. "Miss Hartley." "Willa, if I may be so bold." Ryder turned to face her. "You do not have to go to St. Louis. You do not have to lock yourself away from the world. There are other options." Such as staying here, building the school you and your father dreamed about. Living the life you want, not the life you think you are supposed to want. "And how would I do that?" Willa asked, and she could not keep the frustration from her voice. "I have no family, no money, no protection. A woman alone in this world is vulnerable, Mr. Brooks. The convent offers me security." "The convent offers you a cage," Ryder said bluntly, "and I think you know it, or you would not be standing here talking to me right now." Willa opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. He was right. She knew he was right. What if you were not alone? Ryder said, his voice suddenly urgent. "What if you had someone standing with you?" "What do you mean?" Ryder took a deep breath. "I know this is crazy. I know we barely know each other, but I cannot stop thinking about you, Willa. From the moment I saw you by that creek, washing that bloody handkerchief with this look on your face like you were about to do something desperate. I cannot explain it, but I knew. I knew you were supposed to be in my life." Willa's heart was pounding. "Mr. Brooks, let me finish, please." He took off his hat, turning it in his hands. "I am not a rich man. My ranch is small and some years are harder than others. But I work hard and I am honest, and I would never raise a hand to you or speak to you with disrespect. And if you wanted to build that school, I would help you. I would stand beside you and help you build whatever you wanted to build. You are asking me." Willa could barely get the words out. "What are you asking me?" "I am asking you to choose a different life. Choose a life with me." His blue-green eyes held hers, steady and sure. "Marry me, Willa. Stay in Newton. We could build something together. A ranch, a school, a family, a life. We could build it all together." Willa felt dizzy. This was insane. She had known this man for less than a week. She was supposed to leave for the convent in 2.5 weeks. Everything was arranged. Mother Superior was coming. The sisters were expecting her. But as she looked at Ryder Brooks, at his honest face and his calloused hands and the way he was looking at her like she was the answer to a question he had been asking his whole life, she felt something shift inside her. It was like a door opening, letting in light and air. "I do not know what to say," she whispered. "Say you will think about it," Ryder said. "That is all I ask. Just think about it. Think about what you really want, not what everyone else wants for you." "I will think about it," Willa said, and the words felt like a promise. Over the next week, Willa did little else but think. She went through her daily routines in a daze, her mind constantly returning to Ryder's proposal. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how much she wanted it. Not just marriage to Ryder, though that part made her heart race in a way that was both frightening and wonderful, but the whole life he was offering. The chance to build something, to teach, to matter in a way that felt real and immediate. She tried to pray for guidance, but the only answer she felt was the growing certainty in her heart. She did not want to go to the convent. She probably never had. She had been hiding, choosing safety over risk, certainty over possibility. Sister Agnes noticed her distraction. "Willa, dear, are you feeling well? You seem troubled." "I am fine, sister," Willa said, but it was a lie and they both knew it. On the 8th day after Ryder's proposal, Willa made her decision. She waited until after evening prayers, then went to find Sister Agnes. The older woman was in her room, reading her breviary by lamplight. "Sister, may I speak with you?" "Of course, dear. Come in." Willa sat on the edge of the narrow bed, her hands clasped in her lap. "Sister Agnes, I need to tell you something. I am not going to St. Louis. I am not entering the convent." Sister Agnes closed her book slowly. "I see. May I ask what has changed?" "Everything," Willa said. "Or maybe nothing. Maybe I was never meant for that life and I just did not want to admit it. I was grieving when I came here and you were all so kind. You gave me a purpose when I felt lost. But I realize now that I was choosing the convent out of fear, not faith. And that is not fair to anyone, least of all to God." "What will you do?" Sister Agnes asked, her voice gentle. "There is a man. His name is Ryder Brooks. He has a ranch east of town. He has asked me to marry him." Willa took a deep breath. "And I am going to say yes." She expected Sister Agnes to be upset, to argue, to tell her she was making a mistake, but the older woman just smiled sadly. "I wondered," she said. "You have been different this past week. Distant. And I saw you talking to him in town. Are you angry with me?" "No, dear. How could I be angry? You are following your heart and that takes courage." Sister Agnes reached out and took Willa's hand. "The religious life is not for everyone. It requires a calling, a true vocation. If you do not have that, then you are right not to go through with it. You would only make yourself miserable and that serves no one. Mother Superior will be angry." Let me worry about Mother Superior. She will understand eventually. Sister Agnes squeezed Willa's hand. Be happy, Willa. That is all any of us can hope for. The next morning, Willa walked out to Ryder's ranch. It was a long walk, over 2 hours, but she needed the time to think, to be sure. The land was beautiful in the early autumn light, all golden grass and blue sky. She saw cattle in the distance, and once a rabbit darted across her path. The ranch was smaller than she had imagined, just a modest house and a barn and some corrals. But it was neat and well maintained, and there was something solid about it, something real. Ryder was working with a horse in one of the corrals, teaching it to accept a saddle. He did not see her at first, and she watched him work. He was patient with the animal, speaking to it in a low, calm voice, never forcing or rushing. When he finally noticed her, his face broke into a smile that made her certain she was making the right choice. He climbed over the corral fence and walked to meet her, pulling off his gloves. Willa, I was not expecting you. I wanted to talk to you, she said, about your proposal. She saw hope and fear flicker across his face. All right. I have been thinking about what you said about choosing a life, and you were right. I was choosing the convent out of fear, not faith. I was hiding from the world instead of living in it. And now? Ryder asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Now I want to live in it. With you. Willa took a deep breath. Yes, Ryder, I will marry you. I will choose a life with you. For a moment, Ryder just stared at her as if he could not believe what he was hearing. Then he let out a whoop of joy and picked her up, spinning her around. When he set her down, they were both laughing. You just made me the happiest man in Kansas, he said. Maybe in the whole country. I hope I did not make you a promise I cannot keep, Willa said, suddenly nervous. I have never run a ranch before. I do not know if I will be any good at it. You do not have to be good at ranching, Ryder said. I can handle the ranch. You just have to be you. That is all I need. He took her hands in his. But if you want to help, I would love to teach you. And if you want to start working on that school, I meant what I said. I will help you however I can. I think I would like both, Willa said. I want to learn about the ranch, be part of what you are building. And yes, eventually I would like to start a school, maybe not right away, but someday. Someday sounds perfect. Ryder looked at her for a long moment, his expression turning serious. Willa, I want you to know something. I know we are doing this quickly, and I know there is a lot we do not know about each other yet. But I promise you, I will spend the rest of my life trying to make you happy. I will respect you and honor you and never try to make you into something you are not. I believe you, Willa said, and she realized she did. There was something fundamentally decent about Ryder Brooks, something solid and true. She might not know everything about him yet, but she knew that. They were married 3 days later in the small church in Newton, with Sister Agnes and a handful of townspeople as witnesses. Willa wore a simple blue dress, and Ryder wore his best shirt and a new vest he had bought specially for the occasion. The circuit preacher performed the ceremony, and when Ryder kissed her at the end, Willa felt like she was stepping through that door she had imagined, into light and air and possibility. The townspeople had mixed reactions to the news. Some were scandalized that Willa had given up the convent for marriage. Others were quietly pleased, thinking it more natural that a young woman should marry than shut herself away. Willa tried not to care too much about either reaction. She had made her choice, and she was at peace with it. Mother Superior arrived 2 days after the wedding. Willa went to see her at the rectory, her stomach in knots. The older woman received her in the parlor, her expression stern. Sister Agnes tells me you have made other arrangements, Mother Superior said. Yes, Mother, I am sorry. I know you went to trouble on my behalf. You understand what you have given up. The convent offers security, purpose, a life dedicated to God. You have chosen instead the uncertainties of the world. I have, Mother, but with respect, I do not think my choice is any less dedicated to God. I will still serve, still teach, still try to do good in the world. I will just do it in a different way." Mother Superior regarded her for a long moment. Finally, she said, "I cannot say I approve of your decision, but I can see that your mind is made up and that you have given this careful thought. I will pray that you have chosen wisely." "Thank you, Mother. That is all I can ask." Moving into Ryder's ranch house was both exciting and terrifying. Willa had been living in institutional settings for so long that having her own home felt strange. The house was small but comfortable, with a main room that served as kitchen and living space, a bedroom, and a small loft where Ryder's brother, Caleb, slept when he was there. Caleb himself was 19, tall and lanky with the same light brown hair as his brother. He was shy around Willa at first, clearly not used to having a woman in the house. But Willa made an effort to put him at ease, asking him about his work with the horses and listening with genuine interest to his answers. "I am glad Ryder found you," Caleb told her one evening. "He has been alone too long. We both have, I guess, since our parents died, but Ryder especially. He needed someone." "I needed someone too," Willa admitted. "We are lucky we found each other." Learning to run a household was harder than Willa had expected. She knew how to cook basic meals from her time at the rectory, but cooking on a wood stove was different from cooking on the larger stove Sister Agnes had. She burned more than one dinner in the first week, but Ryder never complained. He just ate what she made and told her it was delicious, even when they both knew it was not. She learned to do laundry in the big copper tub, to make soap, to preserve vegetables for winter. Ryder taught her to milk the cow they kept, and how to gather eggs from the chickens without getting pecked. It was hard work, harder than anything she had done before, but there was a satisfaction to it. She was building a life, one ordinary task at a time. And every night she fell asleep in Ryder's arms, feeling safe and wanted in a way she had not felt since her father died. But it was not all easy. There were moments when Willa questioned her choice. Times when she was exhausted from work, when her hands were rough and her back ached, when she looked at her simple life and wondered if she had made a mistake. The convent had offered certainty, a clear path. This life offered no such assurances. One particularly difficult day, about a month after their wedding, everything seemed to go wrong. Willa scorched the bread, the milk cow kicked over the bucket, and when she went to gather eggs, she found that something had gotten into the hen house during the night and killed 3 of their best laying hens. By the time Ryder came in for the midday meal, Willa was sitting at the table with her head in her hands, trying not to cry. "Hey," Ryder said gently, kneeling beside her chair. "What is wrong?" "Everything," Willa said, her voice muffled. "I cannot do this, Ryder. I am no good at any of it. I cannot even gather eggs without something going wrong." "That is not true. You are learning and you are doing fine." "I am not. I should have stayed in town. I should have." She could not finish the sentence. Should have gone to the convent. No, she did not believe that even now. Ryder took her hands, pulling them away from her face so she had to look at him. "Willa, listen to me. You have been here 1 month. 1 month. Do you know how long it took me to figure out ranching? Years. I am still figuring it out. You cannot expect to be perfect at everything right away. But you never get frustrated with me, even when I ruin things. Because there is nothing to be frustrated about. You are trying, and that is what matters." He smiled at her. "And for the record, I do not need perfect bread or perfectly gathered eggs. I just need you. That is all I ever needed." Willa felt tears slip down her cheeks, but they were different tears now. "How are you so patient with me?" "Because I love you," Ryder said simply. "And love is patient. At least that is what the good book says, right?" Willa laughed through her tears. "Yes, that is what it says." She looked at him, this man who had appeared in her life and offered her everything. "I love you too, Ryder. I should have said it before now, but I love you." Ryder kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Willa felt the last of her doubts melt away. This was where she belonged. Not in a convent, but here, in this small ranch house with this good man, building a life one imperfect day at a time. As autumn deepened into winter, Willa found her rhythm. She became more confident in her household tasks, more comfortable in her role. She started to think about the future, about the school she wanted to build. But she also found herself content with the present, with the simple pleasures of her new life. She and Ryder would sit by the fire in the evenings, and she would read to him from her father's books. Ryder had limited education, but he loved learning, and Willa loved teaching him. They read history and poetry, and sometimes Willa would teach him Greek and Latin phrases. He was a quick student, picking things up with an ease that surprised them both. "You could have been a scholar," Willa told him one night, "if you had been born to different circumstances." "Maybe," Ryder said. "But then I might not have become a rancher and I might not have met you, so I think things worked out all right." Winter in Kansas was harsh. The wind howled across the prairie and snow piled up against the house. There were days when Ryder could barely make it to the barn and back. But inside, the house was warm, and Willa found she did not mind being snowed in. It gave her time to work on plans for the school, sketching out what it might look like, what she would teach. Caleb had gone to stay with a friend for the winter, helping out on a larger ranch, so it was just Willa and Ryder. They grew closer during those long winter months, learning each other in ways both ordinary and intimate. Willa learned that Ryder sang when he worked, that he had a fear of thunderstorms left over from childhood, that he was gentle and considerate and made her laugh. Ryder learned that Willa talked in her sleep, that she was stubborn when she thought she was right, that she had a talent for mathematics, that she was passionate and thoughtful and made him want to be a better man. By the time spring came, Willa felt like they had been married for years instead of months. The snow melted, the grass turned green, and the world came back to life. And with it came new possibilities. One day in April, Ryder came back from town with news. "I heard something interesting at the general store," he said. "The old Jacobson place is for sale. You know, that property right at the edge of town." "I know it," Willa said. The Jacobsons had moved back east the previous year. Their property consisted of about 5 acres with a large barn and a small house. "I was thinking," Ryder said carefully. "That barn is big enough to be converted into a school. It would need work, but it is structurally sound. And the location is perfect, right there in town where families could easily bring their children." Willa stared at him. "Are you suggesting we buy it?" "I am suggesting we look into it, see how much they are asking, whether we could make it work." He took her hand. "You have been dreaming about that school for months now. Maybe it is time to make it real. But we do not have that kind of money. We have some saved, and I talked to the bank about a loan. They said it was possible if we could make a good case for it." Willa felt excitement bubbling up inside her. "You really think we could do this?" "I think we can do anything we set our minds to. Together." They went to look at the property the next day. The barn was even better than Willa remembered, high-ceilinged with good windows. She could see it so clearly. Desks arranged in rows, a blackboard at the front, books lining the walls. Children learning, growing, becoming. "We could live in the small house during the week," Ryder said, thinking out loud. "Make it easier for you to run the school. And go back to the ranch on weekends." "What about the ranch work?" "Caleb is back and he is getting good enough to handle most of it, and I can still do the important stuff on weekends and early mornings." He grinned at her. "I told you I want to help you build this. I meant it." It took 3 months to arrange everything. The negotiations for the property were complicated, and the bank required more assurances than Willa had expected. But Ryder was patient and persistent, and finally, in July of 1879, they signed the papers. The property was theirs. The work of converting the barn into a school began immediately. Ryder and Caleb did most of the physical labor, tearing out stalls and putting up walls. Willa planned the layout, determined what supplies they would need. Some of the townspeople, hearing about the school, offered to help. The blacksmith donated nails and hinges. The general store owner gave them a discount on lumber. Even Sister Agnes came to help, painting walls and organizing books. "I am proud of you," Sister Agnes told Willa one day. "You found your calling after all, just not the one I expected." "I could not have done this without you," Willa said. "You took me in when I had nowhere else to go. You gave me time to figure out what I really wanted." "And now you have it," Sister Agnes said, smiling. "A good man, a purpose, a life. What more could anyone want?" The school opened in September of 1879, exactly 1 year after Willa was supposed to have entered the convent. She had 12 students that first day, ranging in age from 6 to 14. She taught them reading, writing, arithmetic, history, and science, just as her father had taught her. She treated the girls and boys equally, giving them all the same rigorous education. It was exhausting work, but Willa loved it. She loved seeing the children's faces light up when they understood something new. She loved the challenge of teaching different ages and abilities all in one room. She loved knowing that she was making a difference, that she was building something that would outlast her. Ryder was her constant support. He helped her prepare lessons in the evenings, listened to her talk about her students, encouraged her when she was frustrated. And he was building something too. The ranch was growing, slowly but steadily. He had a reputation now for training good horses, and people came from miles around to buy from him. They were happy. But there was one shadow on their happiness. By the end of their first year of marriage, Willa had expected to be pregnant. But month after month passed with no sign of a child. She tried not to worry about it, but she could not help feeling disappointed each time her hopes were dashed. "Maybe there is something wrong with me," she said to Ryder one night, fighting back tears. "There is nothing wrong with you," Ryder said firmly. "These things happen in their own time. We just have to be patient." "But what if it never happens? What if we can never have children?" Ryder pulled her close. "Then we will have a good life anyway. I married you because I love you, Willa, not because I expected you to give me children. If it happens, wonderful. If it does not, we will find other ways to build our family. Maybe we will have a house full of stray animals and students who need extra help. Maybe we will adopt. There are always options." His words comforted her, but the longing did not go away. Willa found herself watching mothers with their children, feeling a pang of envy. She threw herself into her teaching, loving her students as if they were her own. But it was not quite the same. Then, in the spring of 1881, nearly 2 years after their wedding, Willa realized her monthly courses were late. She did not dare hope at first. She had been late before. But when 2 months passed with no sign, she finally allowed herself to believe it might be true. She went to see the doctor in Newton, an elderly man named Dr. Pritchard, who had delivered half the babies in the county. He examined her and confirmed what she already suspected. She was pregnant, about 3 months along. The baby would come in late September or early October. Willa walked home in a daze, hardly able to believe it. After all the waiting, all the disappointment, it was finally happening. She was going to have a baby. She and Ryder were going to be parents. She waited until dinner that night to tell him. Caleb was eating with them, so she could not be as direct as she wanted. "Ryder, I went to see Dr. Pritchard today," she said, trying to sound casual. Ryder looked up, concerned. "Are you ill?" "No, I am perfectly healthy. In fact, I am healthier than I have been in a long time." She smiled, unable to hold back any longer. "I am pregnant, Ryder. We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Ryder just stared at her. Then he let out a shout of joy and jumped up from the table, pulling her into his arms. "Are you sure?" "Are you really sure?" "I am sure." Dr. Pritchard confirmed it. "The baby should come in October." Caleb was grinning. "I am going to be an uncle," he said, sounding amazed. That night, after Caleb had gone to bed, Ryder and Willa lay together, his hand resting on her still flat stomach. "I can hardly believe it," he said. "A baby, our baby." "I was starting to think it would never happen," Willa admitted. "I was trying to be patient, but it was hard." "It was worth the wait," Ryder said. "Everything worthwhile is. The pregnancy was not easy." Willa was sick for the first few months, barely able to keep food down. She tried to keep teaching, but by June she had to close the school for the summer. She was too tired, too overwhelmed by the physical changes happening to her body. But as the sickness faded and she moved into the middle months of pregnancy, Willa found herself filled with energy and excitement. She and Ryder prepared the small room off their bedroom as a nursery, painting it a soft yellow. Sister Agnes knitted blankets and caps. The townswomen threw her a party, bringing gifts of tiny clothes and diapers. Willa felt surrounded by community in a way she never had before. These people had become her family. Newton had become her home. The baby came on a cool night in early October. Willa's labor started just after sunset, and by midnight she was gripping Ryder's hand and trying not to scream. Dr. Pritchard was there, and Sister Agnes, and a midwife named Mrs. O'Brien who had delivered hundreds of babies. "You are doing fine," Dr. Pritchard kept saying. "Just fine." But Willa did not feel fine. She felt like she was being torn apart. The pain was beyond anything she had imagined, and she found herself wondering if she would survive it. "I cannot do this," she gasped at one point. "You are doing it," Ryder said, his voice steady even though his face was pale. "You are the strongest person I know, Willa. You can do this." And somehow she did. At dawn, as the first light was breaking over the prairie, Willa gave birth to a son. Dr. Pritchard placed the squalling, red-faced baby in her arms, and Willa looked down at him and felt her heart expand in a way she had not known was possible. "He is perfect," she whispered. "He is," Ryder agreed, his voice choked with emotion. He was crying, Willa realized. Tough, practical Ryder Brooks was crying over their son. They named him James after Willa's father. James Brooks. He had a powerful set of lungs and a fierce grip, and from the moment he was born, he had both his parents wrapped around his tiny finger. The first few months of parenthood were a blur of sleepless nights and constant worry. Willa had never been so tired in her life, but she had also never been so happy. She would stand over James's cradle, watching him sleep, marveling that she and Ryder had created this tiny, perfect person. Ryder was a devoted father. He would walk James around the house when he was fussy, singing off key cowboy songs until the baby settled. He changed diapers without complaint and got up for middle-of-the-night feedings. He was patient and gentle and completely smitten. "I never knew I could love someone this much," he told Willa one night watching James nurse. "I thought I knew what love was when I married you, but this is different. It is like my heart got bigger." "I know exactly what you mean," Willa said. Willa reopened the school when James was 6 months old. She brought him with her, setting up a cradle in the corner of the classroom. The students were enchanted with the baby, and the older girls would help watch him during lessons. It was not ideal, but it worked. Life settled into a new rhythm. Willa taught during the day, cared for James, helped Ryder with the ranch when she could. It was exhausting, but it was also deeply fulfilling. She was using all of herself, her mind, her body, her heart. She was building the life she wanted, one day at a time. James grew into a curious, active toddler. He had Ryder's blue-green eyes and Willa's dark hair, and he was constantly getting into things. Willa learned to keep a close eye on him, especially around the horses. Ryder started teaching him about animals early, showing him how to be gentle and respectful. "He is going to be a rancher," Ryder said proudly, watching his son toddle around the corral. "He is going to be whatever he wants to be," Willa corrected. "But yes, I think he loves the animals already." When James was 2, Willa discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than the first, and in the summer of 1884 she gave birth to a daughter. They named her Caroline, and she was as different from James as night from day. Where he had been fussy and demanding, Caroline was calm and content. She slept through the night from 6 weeks old and smiled at everyone. "We got lucky with this one," Ryder said, cradling his daughter. "She is going to be easy." "Do not count on it," Willa said, but she was smiling. She loved having a daughter, loved seeing Ryder's gentle side come out even more with Caroline. He was protective and tender, already dreading the day she would grow up and want to leave home. With 2 children, Willa had to make some changes. She hired an assistant teacher, a young woman named Lucy Miller who had been one of Willa's best students. Lucy took over much of the day-to-day teaching, while Willa focused on planning lessons and managing the school. It was not what Willa had originally envisioned, but it worked. And it gave her more time with her children. The years passed quickly. James and Caroline grew, the ranch prospered, the school expanded. They added onto the barn, creating more classrooms. Lucy became a full partner in running the school. Caleb married a girl from a neighboring ranch and started his own place. Life was good, busy, full. When Willa was 30, she looked back at the girl she had been at 21, standing by that creek washing blood from a handkerchief, and she could hardly believe how much had changed. She had been so lost then, so certain that the convent was her only option. She had been choosing safety over life itself. And then Ryder had appeared and asked her a simple question. What do you want? She had wanted this. All of this. A partner who respected her, children who filled her heart, work that mattered. A life built on love and effort and hope. One evening in the fall of 1889, Willa and Ryder sat on the porch of their house in town, watching the sun set over the prairie. James, now 9, was practicing his roping skills in the yard. Caroline, 5, was playing with a set of wooden blocks Ryder had made for her. "You ever regret it?" Ryder asked suddenly. "Choosing this life instead of the convent?" Willa looked at him in surprise. "Never, not once." "Why would you ask that?" "I do not know. Sometimes I wonder if I took you away from something important, a higher calling." "You did not take me away from anything," Willa said firmly. "You offered me a choice I did not know I had, and I chose you. I chose this. I would choose it again 1,000 times over." Ryder smiled and took her hand. "I am glad, because I cannot imagine my life without you. You and these kids, you are everything to me." "And you are everything to us," Willa said. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. Willa thought about all the paths her life might have taken, all the different futures that had been possible. She could have gone to St. Louis, spent her life teaching in a convent school, serving God in that particular way. It would have been a good life, probably. A peaceful life. But it would not have been this life. It would not have had Ryder's laugh or James's curiosity or Caroline's sweet nature. It would not have had the satisfaction of building a school from nothing, of watching it grow and thrive. It would not have had the simple, profound pleasure of sitting on a porch with the man she loved, watching the day end and knowing that tomorrow would bring more of the same, work and love and life. "I am happy," Willa said suddenly. "I just wanted to say that. I am happy." "So am I," Ryder said, squeezing her hand. "So am I." Over the next few years, the school continued to grow. By 1892, they had 3 full-time teachers and nearly 40 students. Willa had achieved what her father had dreamed of, a real school where children could get a solid education. She taught the older students advanced subjects like Latin and geometry, the things she had learned from her father. James, at 12, was torn between the ranch and the classroom. He loved working with horses, but he also loved learning. Willa encouraged both interests, believing that education would only make him better at whatever he chose to do. Caroline, at 8, was already showing signs of being a teacher herself. She was patient with younger children, always willing to help them with their lessons. Willa could see her daughter following in her footsteps, and the thought filled her with pride. In the spring of 1893, Willa had a surprise. At 36, she found herself pregnant again. She had thought her childbearing years were over, but apparently God had other plans. This pregnancy was harder than the previous 2. She was older, and her body did not bounce back as easily. But when their son was born that November, healthy and howling, Willa felt only gratitude. They named him Thomas, and he was a perfect blend of both his parents. He had Ryder's easygoing nature and Willa's sharp mind. From the start, he seemed to observe everything with intelligent eyes. 3 children, Ryder said, holding Thomas while Willa rested. "We have a full house now." "We do," Willa agreed, "and I love it." Raising 3 children, running a school, and helping with the ranch kept Willa busy every moment of every day. But she thrived on it. She loved the challenge, loved feeling useful and needed. And she loved that her children were growing up seeing both their parents work hard and support each other. As James entered his teenage years, he became more serious about the ranch. He worked alongside his father every day, learning everything Ryder could teach him. But he also continued his studies, understanding that knowledge was valuable whether you were a rancher or a scholar. Caroline became Willa's assistant at the school when she was 14, helping teach the younger children. She had a natural gift for it, a patience and creativity that made learning fun. Willa watched her daughter teach and felt a deep sense of continuity. Her father had taught her, she had taught her students and her daughter, and now Caroline would teach the next generation. Thomas, the youngest, was only 7, but already he was showing signs of being the family's wild card. He was fearless and adventurous, always climbing trees or exploring the creek or trying to ride horses that were too big for him. He kept everyone on their toes. In 1898, as the century was drawing to a close, Willa looked around at her life and felt overwhelming gratitude. She was 41 years old. She had been married to Ryder for 19 years. Her oldest son was 17, her daughter 15, her youngest 8. The school was thriving, the ranch was successful, and she was surrounded by people she loved. Sometimes she thought about that moment by the creek when Ryder had asked her what she wanted. She had not known how to answer then, but now she knew. She had wanted exactly this, a life of purpose and passion, of hard work and deep love, of building something that mattered. One evening, she and Ryder walked out to the creek where they had first met. It was summer and the evening was warm, the sky still light. The water bubbled over rocks, the same as it had 20 years ago. "You remember the first time I saw you here?" Ryder asked. "Of course I remember. You told me I was washing laundry downstream of where the animals drink," Ryder laughed. "I was trying to be helpful." "You were being annoying," Willa said, but she was smiling. "And then you asked me if I really wanted to go to the convent. Best question I ever asked. Best answer I ever gave." Willa leaned against him and he put his arm around her. Thank you, Ryder, for giving me a choice, for giving me this life. Thank you for choosing it, for choosing me." He kissed the top of her head. "I still cannot believe my luck sometimes. That you were there that day, that I had the courage to speak to you, that you said yes." "It was not luck," Willa said. "It was meant to be. I truly believe that. Everything in my life led me to that moment, to you." They stood by the creek for a long time, watching the water flow past, holding each other close. Behind them, somewhere in the distance, they could hear their children's voices. Ahead of them, the future stretched out, full of possibility. As the new century approached, life in Newton continued to change and grow. The town was larger now, more established. The wild lawlessness of the early frontier days had given way to a more settled community. But there was still the feeling of possibility, of building something new. Willa's school had become a cornerstone of the community. Children who had learned in her classroom were now adults, some with children of their own. Several of her former students had gone on to college, something that would have been unthinkable without the education she provided. She was proud of that legacy, of the difference she had made. James, at 19, was running much of the ranch now. Ryder was in his 40s and slowing down a bit, content to let his son take on more responsibility. James had grown into a fine young man, strong and capable and kind. Willa knew he would make something special of the ranch. Caroline, at 17, was making plans to attend a teaching college. She wanted to come back to Newton and teach at the school, but Willa encouraged her to see more of the world first. "You can always come home," Willa told her. "But take the chance to learn and grow somewhere else first. It will make you a better teacher." Thomas, at 10, was still a handful, but he was also bright and curious, always asking questions, always wanting to understand how things worked. Willa thought he might become an engineer or an inventor someday. Whatever he chose, she knew he would throw himself into it with passion. In 1900, Willa turned 43. She felt the years now in ways she had not when she was younger. Her hands ached sometimes from years of work. There were lines around her eyes and silver in her dark hair, but she did not mind. Every line, every ache was evidence of a life fully lived. Ryder, at 47, still made her heart flutter when he smiled at her. He was graying at the temples, and there were deep laugh lines around his eyes, but to Willa, he was as handsome as the day she had first seen him by the creek. Maybe more so, because now she knew him completely. She knew his heart, his mind, his soul, and she loved all of it. They talked sometimes about slowing down, about handing more responsibilities to the next generation. But neither of them was quite ready. They still had work to do, dreams to fulfill, life to live. One particularly significant day came in the spring of 1902. James announced that he was engaged to a young woman named Emma from a neighboring ranch. She was smart and capable, and she clearly loved James deeply. Willa welcomed her into the family with open arms. The wedding was held that summer at the ranch, with half the county in attendance. Willa watched her son marry his sweetheart and felt the circle of life continuing. James and Emma would build their own life now, just as she and Ryder had built theirs. "Our boy is all grown up," Ryder said, watching James dance with his bride. "He is," Willa agreed. "We did well with him." "We did well with all of them." Within a year, James and Emma announced they were expecting. Willa was going to be a grandmother. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. She did not feel old enough to be a grandmother. But when Emma gave birth to a daughter in the spring of 1903, and Willa held her tiny granddaughter for the first time, she understood. This was another kind of love, another way of building a legacy. They named the baby Grace, and she was perfect. Willa looked at her and saw the future stretching out in ways she could not even imagine. Grace would grow up in a world different from the one Willa had known. The old Wild West was fading, becoming something more civilized. But the values would remain: hard work, family, community, love. Caroline came home from college in 1904, her teaching certificate in hand. She joined the school as a full teacher, bringing new ideas and energy. Willa was able to step back a bit, letting Caroline take on more of the daily teaching while Willa focused on administration and the older students. Working alongside her daughter was one of the great joys of Willa's life. She saw so much of herself in Caroline, but also so much that was uniquely Caroline. Her daughter was more patient than Willa, more creative in her teaching methods. She brought music and art into the classroom in ways Willa never had. Together, they made the school even better. Thomas, now a teenager, was still trying to figure out his path. He helped at the ranch, but his heart was not in it the way James's had been. He liked the school, but he did not want to be a teacher. He was restless, always looking for the next adventure. "He will find his way," Ryder assured Willa when she worried about him. "Some people just take longer to figure out where they belong," and Ryder was right. When Thomas was 16, a surveyor came through Newton, mapping the area for the railroad company. Thomas was fascinated, following the man around, asking endless questions. By the time the surveyor left, Thomas knew what he wanted to do. He wanted to be an engineer, building railroads and bridges connecting the country. "It is perfect for him," Willa said. "He always wanted to build things, to move, to explore. This lets him do all of that." Thomas left for engineering school when he was 18. And though Willa missed him, she was proud. All her children were finding their paths, becoming who they were meant to be. The years continued to pass, marked by seasons and celebrations, by births and deaths, by the ordinary moments that make up a life. Grace grew from a baby to a toddler to a little girl. James and Emma had 2 more children, a son named Peter and another daughter named Alice. Willa's school celebrated its 25th anniversary. The ranch continued to thrive. Caroline married a young lawyer who had moved to Newton, and they built a house near the school. Through it all, Willa and Ryder remained at the center, the foundation on which everything was built. They still sat on their porch in the evenings, watching the sunset. They still held hands. They still made each other laugh. The passion of their early years had mellowed into something deeper and more sustaining, a love that had been tested by time and found unshakable. In 1908, as Willa approached her 51st birthday, she reflected on the nearly 30 years since she had walked away from the convent. She thought about the girl she had been, so uncertain and afraid, convinced she had no choices. And she thought about the woman she had become. Wife, mother, grandmother, teacher, community leader. She had built so much, created so much, loved so much. One evening, she and Ryder took a rare evening alone, riding out to a spot on the prairie they had always loved. The grass stretched out in all directions, golden in the setting sun. They spread a blanket and sat, watching the day end. "You ever think about how different things might have been?" Willa asked. "If we had not met that day, if I had gone to St. Louis?" "Sometimes," Ryder admitted. "But I try not to think about it too much. It makes me sad, thinking about all the years we would have missed." "I would have missed everything," Willa said quietly. "The most important parts of my life, I would have missed all of it. But you did not miss it. You chose it. You chose this life, chose me, and we built something beautiful together." Willa leaned against him, feeling the solid strength of him, the steady beat of his heart. "I wish my father could see what we built. The school, the family, all of it. He would be so proud." "He would be," Ryder agreed. "And he would be most proud of you, Willa. Of the woman you became, the life you chose to live. You honored his memory by living fully, by not hiding from the world. I could not have done it without you. And I could not have done any of it without you. We made each other better. That is what love does when it is real. They sat in silence for a while, holding each other, watching the stars begin to appear, and Willa felt complete peace. This was where she belonged. This was the life she was meant to live. Not behind convent walls, not shut away from the world, but here, in the midst of everything messy and beautiful and real. As they rode home under the stars, Willa thought about the choices that define a life. The moment when you stand at a crossroads and have to decide which path to take. She had stood at such a crossroads 29 years ago, and a cowboy had offered her a different path. "Choose a life with me," he had said. And she had chosen. She had chosen love and risk and possibility. She had chosen life itself, and it had been the best choice she ever made. The years that followed brought more changes, as years always do. Thomas graduated from engineering school and got a job with a railroad company, traveling across the country. He wrote long letters home, describing the places he saw, the bridges he was helping build. Willa saved every letter, proud of her adventurous son. James and Emma had one more child, a son they named Ryder after his grandfather. Old Ryder was moved to tears when they told him, holding his namesake with shaking hands. "I never thought," he said, his voice choked. "I never thought I would see this. Great-grandchildren carrying on our name. You built something that will last," Willa told him. "We both did, and it will go on long after we are gone." Caroline and her husband had 2 children of their own, twin boys who were as different as night and day. The school now had 5 teachers and over 70 students. It had become more than Willa and her father had ever dreamed. In 1912, Willa turned 55. She was slowing down now, her body finally insisting that she could not do everything she used to do. She retired from active teaching, though she remained involved with the school, advising Caroline and the other teachers. She spent more time at the ranch, more time with her grandchildren, more time simply being. Ryder, at 59, had mostly handed over the ranch to James, though he still rode out most days to check on things. "Cannot seem to break the habit," he told Willa with a grin. "I have been working this land for over 30 years. It is part of me now." They had been married for 33 years. 3 decades of life together, and Willa could honestly say she loved him more now than she had on their wedding day. She had loved him then with hope and promise. She loved him now with knowledge and certainty. She knew every part of him, and he knew every part of her, and they chose each other anew every single day. Their 50th birthdays were celebrated with a big party. All their children came, and all their grandchildren, and half the town. There were speeches and toasts and stories about the old days. People talked about how much Newton had changed, how much Willa and Ryder had contributed to that change. "We just lived our lives," Ryder said in his brief speech. "We worked hard, tried to be good to each other and to our neighbors. That is all any of us can do." But Willa knew it was more than that. They had built something, created something. The school had educated hundreds of children. The ranch had provided jobs and horses and stability. Their family had grown and flourished. They had made a difference. As Willa looked around at the gathering, at all the people whose lives they had touched, she felt overwhelming gratitude. This was what life was about. Not the grand gestures or the big moments, but the accumulation of days lived well, of love given and received, of work done with pride. Late that night, after everyone had gone home and they were alone, Willa and Ryder sat on their porch one more time. The stars were brilliant overhead and a cool breeze was blowing in from the prairie. 55 years old, Willa said. "Where did the time go?" "Into living," Ryder said. "Into building and loving and being. That is where time goes when it is well spent." "Do you have any regrets?" Willa asked. Ryder thought about it. I wish we had been able to travel more, see more of the country. But no, not real regrets. I got to live the life I wanted with the woman I loved. What more could a man ask for? What more indeed, Willa said softly. They sat in comfortable silence as they had done thousands of times before. And Willa thought about that moment by the creek, that pivot point when her entire life had changed. She thought about the fear she had felt, the uncertainty. And she thought about the courage it had taken to say yes to Ryder, to choose the unknown over the safe. But it had not been courage, she realized now. Or not just courage. It had been hope. Hope that life could be more than duty and obligation. Hope that she could be more than what circumstances had made her. Hope that love was real and worth risking everything for. And that hope had been rewarded beyond anything she could have imagined. The years slowed down after that, becoming more precious for their scarcity. Willa and Ryder settled into a gentle rhythm, their days marked by simple pleasures. Morning coffee on the porch, walks around the property, evenings with family, church on Sundays. The slow, sweet pace of a life well lived. There were sorrows, of course. Sister Agnes passed away in 1915, and Willa mourned her friend deeply. She had been the one who had sheltered Willa in her darkest time, who had supported her decision to leave even though it meant losing a novice. Willa made sure she had a proper funeral, with the whole town in attendance. Caleb, Ryder's younger brother, died suddenly of a heart attack in 1916. He was only 56. Ryder took it hard, the loss of the only family he had brought with him to Kansas. But he had his own family now to comfort him, his wife, his children and grandchildren, the legacy they had built together. In 1918, the Great War that had been raging in Europe finally ended. Thomas came home, having served as an engineer in the army. He was different, quieter, haunted by things he would not talk about. But gradually, with the love and support of his family, he began to heal. He settled in Newton, taking a job with the railroad and eventually marrying a widow with 2 children of her own, and life went on. By 1920, Willa was 63 and Ryder was 67. They were both slowing down considerably now. Ryder's joints ached with arthritis, and Willa's eyes were not what they used to be. But they were healthy for their age, and they still had each other. The school was now entirely run by Caroline and a staff of dedicated teachers. It had expanded beyond the converted barn to a new, purpose-built building. There was talk of it becoming an official public school, part of the state system. Willa was proud of how it had grown, how it had outlasted her active involvement. The ranch was doing well under James's management. He had expanded it, adding cattle to their horse operation. His oldest son, Peter, was now 20 and working alongside his father, just as James had worked alongside Ryder. Grace, Willa's oldest granddaughter, was now a young woman of 17, and she had just announced her intention to become a teacher like her grandmother and her aunt. Willa was moved beyond words. "You do not have to follow in our footsteps," Willa told her. "You can be whatever you want to be." "But I want to be a teacher," Grace said firmly. "I want to help children learn and grow just like you did for so many people. That is what I want." And Willa realized that this was the ultimate legacy. Not buildings or institutions, but the passing on of values, of dreams, of the belief that one person could make a difference. On a beautiful autumn day in 1921, Willa and Ryder celebrated their 42nd wedding anniversary. Their children threw them a party, complete with cake and music and dancing. Willa and Ryder danced together, moving slowly but surely to the music, their bodies knowing each other so well that they moved as one. 42 years, Ryder said, his voice full of wonder. "Can you believe it?" "Sometimes I feel like we just got married yesterday," Willa said. "And sometimes I feel like we have been together forever." "Forever is how long I want to be with you," Ryder said, and then laughed at himself. "Listen to me, getting all sentimental in my old age." "I like it," Willa said. "I like everything about you, Ryder Brooks. I always have." As they swayed to the music, surrounded by family and friends, Willa felt completely at peace. She had lived a good life, a full life. She had loved and been loved. She had worked hard and made a difference. She had raised children and seen them raise their own children. She had built something that would last. What more could anyone ask for? The next few years passed peacefully. Willa and Ryder spent most of their time at the ranch now, leaving the townhouse to Caroline and her family. They enjoyed their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, watched the seasons change, tended a small garden. They talked sometimes about the old days, remembering the early years of their marriage when everything was new and uncertain, the birth of their children, the growth of the school and the ranch, the challenges they had faced and overcome together. "We did all right," Ryder would say. "We did better than all right," Willa would correct him. "We did wonderfully." In the spring of 1925, Ryder fell ill. It started as a cold but developed into pneumonia. At 72, he did not have the strength to fight it off. Willa stayed by his bedside, holding his hand, willing him to get better. "You cannot leave me," she told him fiercely. "Not yet. We still have time." "We have had 46 years, Ryder said, his voice weak. "That is more than most people get. That is more than I ever dreamed of. It is not enough. It will have to be." He squeezed her hand. "Willa, my love, you made my life worth living. You gave me everything that matters. I have no regrets." "I do not either," Willa said, tears streaming down her face. "Except that I want more time with you. Me too. But if I have to go, I will go knowing I was the luckiest man alive. I got to love you. I got to build a life with you. What more could I ask for?" Ryder died 3 days later peacefully, with Willa and all their children by his side. Willa held his hand as he took his last breath, feeling like her own heart was breaking. 46 years together, and still it was not enough. It would never have been enough. The funeral was huge. It seemed like the entire county came to pay their respects. Ryder had been respected and loved, a man who had built something lasting and treated everyone with kindness and fairness. Person after person came up to Willa, telling her stories about Ryder, about how he had helped them or taught them or simply been kind when they needed it. Willa listened to all of it, grateful for the evidence that Ryder's life had mattered, that he had made a difference. But all she really wanted was to have him back, to sit on the porch with him one more time, to hold his hand and watch the sunset. The months after Ryder's death were the hardest of Willa's life. She felt lost without him, adrift. They had been partners for so long that she did not know how to be just herself. She moved through her days mechanically, doing what needed to be done but feeling no joy in it. Her children and grandchildren rallied around her, making sure she was never alone for long. But Willa knew that grief was something she had to work through herself. No one could do it for her. Slowly, painfully, she began to find her way. She started going through Ryder's things, sorting and organizing. She found letters he had saved from the early days of their courtship. She found drawings their children had made as kids that he had kept. She found evidence everywhere of a life lived with love and intention, and she began to remember not just that he was gone, but that he had been here, that they had had 46 beautiful years together. That was not nothing. That was everything. One day, nearly a year after Ryder's death, Willa walked out to the creek where they had first met. It was a warm summer day, and the creek was burbling over the rocks just as it had been that day almost 47 years ago when Ryder had ridden up and asked her if she really wanted to go to the convent. She sat on the bank, letting the sound of the water soothe her. And she talked to Ryder wherever he was. "I miss you," she said out loud. "Every day I miss you, but I am grateful too, for every moment we had, for the life we built, for the love we shared. You gave me everything, Ryder, everything that mattered." She sat there for a long time, remembering. And when she finally walked back to the house, she felt lighter somehow. The grief was still there, but so was the gratitude, so was the love, and that would never go away. Willa lived for another 12 years after Ryder's death. She saw Grace graduate from teaching college and start her own school in a nearby town. She saw Peter take over the ranch from James, who was ready to retire. She saw Thomas's stepchildren have children of their own, making her a great-great-grandmother. She spent her days quietly, reading and gardening and spending time with family. She attended church every Sunday, finding comfort in the rituals and community. She wrote down her memories, wanting to preserve the story of her life for future generations. And every evening, she sat on the porch and watched the sunset, imagining Ryder beside her. Willa Hartley Brooks died peacefully in her sleep in the spring of 1937, at the age of 80. She was buried next to Ryder, in the cemetery on the hill overlooking Newton. Nearly the entire town came to her funeral, just as they had come to Ryder's. People spoke of her contributions, the school she had founded, the children she had taught, the example she had set. They spoke of her strength and kindness, her intelligence and grace. They spoke of the love she and Ryder had shared, a love that had been obvious to everyone who knew them. But perhaps the most moving tribute came from Grace, her oldest granddaughter, who was now a teacher herself. "My grandmother taught me," Grace said, her voice strong and clear, "that we always have choices, that we can choose the life we want to live if we are brave enough. She chose love over fear. She chose life over safety. She chose to build something beautiful and lasting. And because she made those choices, all of us are here today. We are her legacy, all of us. The children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren she loved, the students she taught, the community she served. She lived a life that mattered, and we are all better for it." And that, perhaps, was the truest thing that could be said. Willa Hartley Brooks had lived a life that mattered. She had been preparing to enter a convent forever, to lock herself away from the world. But a cowboy had said, "Choose a life with me," and she had found the courage to say yes. And in saying yes, she had built something beautiful. A marriage, a family, a school, a legacy. A life of love and purpose and joy. She had chosen well.